6 times he has been to the Winter Olympics.
Sport is all about access.
Growing up in South Africa, we're a very active culture. We have a lot of accessibility to sports.
And so it's a very interesting time in sport in India.
I've been fortunate to work with some of the earliest physios from the IPL. Working with different athletes, different sports, etc. has really shaped where I am.
It's weird to say team because it was just me.
Neeraj every single day would come in, he would put his name on the list on his own. He'd walk out, he'd be there 5 minutes before, he'd get ready, he'd do his thing. He was watching his own clock. Done, nice and tidy, leaves the room. Probably as a standout experience, the hockey guys won bronze and Neeraj won silver.
From your first Olympics to your 6th Olympics, what all changed?
It's a very interesting question because
Bring in your competitive Olympian mentality.
Faster, higher, stronger.
now all the mottos of the previous Olympics are coming back.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Podium, a sports podcast by Reliance Foundation. I am your host, Enakshi Rajvanshi, and today we have been joined by two incredible guests. These guys have been shaping the world of Indian sports in unique ways. Welcome Shiva, welcome Christopher.
Thank you.
Enakshi.
Our first guest is Shiva Keshavan, a 6-time Winter Olympian. Can you imagine? 6 times he has been to the Winter Olympics. He's also a 4-time Asian champion and he's a pioneer of winter sports in India. Now, as the head of scholarships at Reliance Foundation, you're also helping the next set of athletes achieve their dreams. So kudos on that. Christopher Pedra, originally from South Africa, he's worked with some of the world's top athletes. He's now the head of sports medicine at Reliance Foundation. Both Shiva and Christopher were a huge part of the Paris Olympics, helping the Indian contingent in different capacities. Shiva as the deputy chef de mission and Christopher as the head of recovery and chief physio. Thank you for also being there with the athletes behind the scenes. And at Reliance Foundation, we have a lot of other athletes that have been participating, representing the country. So thank you for your journeys. And in this episode, we want to hear all about interesting stories. Shiva, we'll start with you. How did something like luge happen? I know you come from a very diverse heritage. Your mother is Italian, your dad is from South India. How did that happen? Like being in Himalayas, training for a sport nobody has even heard of in India.
I think sports is a lot about circumstance, right? Sport is all about access. So what may be a natural choice for somebody like me, born and brought up in a small village up in the mountains, 2,500 meters in altitude, would be very different than somebody who grows up at the coast or anywhere else for that matter. So the purpose of sport is also to allow youth to express themselves through various means, right? But targeting, physical, mental, and social cohesion, right? So that is kind of the basic of sports. And so I picked up winter sports. I managed to make a career out of it.
Christopher, Shiva just told us about how he got into a sport like luge. And because of Shiva, him participating, I think you were also the first Indian to represent India in the sport at the Winter Olympics. So a lot of people know about the sport. For you, it's been a very different journey. You're from South Africa, and I'm sure you've worked across countries, you've worked across sports, not just one sport. How did you choose sports medicine, something so niche?
I think probably quite similar to the message that Shiva was kind of delivering there is, these things kind of sometimes just happen. And I've been very fortunate in my journey, I suppose, to get to where I am now. And I'm still very much on a journey. But growing up in South Africa, we're a very active culture. I played a lot of sport growing up. Any free moment you have in South Africa, you're in the garden, you're running around, you're playing something. Once I got to university and I was interested in physio, I suppose, having been injured a number of times myself as an athlete, it was something that naturally I was gravitating towards when I didn't really know what else to do. And fortunately, from there, I ended up working with a lot of people who I suppose have guided me without meaning to guide me. And again, going back to Shiva's point about how these things kind of happen and you find yourself in the right place at the right time and it's kind of up to you to do it or not. And so I've been fortunate to work with some of the earliest physios from the IPL. Was one of my first kind of mentors in university, and thereafter my first job. I had a great mentor who exposed me a lot to the world of professional sports as a sports medicine professional, and then through that, I eventually started working in Asia as well, and sports actually what brought me out here. So, I suppose along the way, I've kind of I've managed to find myself in situations where I've been open to learning, and I've been under the right people to learn as well, and that's kind of how I've ended up here, fortunately.
So you work across sports. Like, could you tell us what kind of sports or what kind of athletes you have worked with over the years? Because I'm sure you have a vast.
Yeah, so it's quite a checkered past, really, from that point of view. But I think that's again a positive. So I started out in professional football, and that taught me a great deal working in professional football in South Africa. As you can imagine, South Africa and India have a lot of parallels with regards to the way sports is run, the background that a lot of athletes come from, the way sports managed, etc. People's journeys through sport, the hope it gives people. So there was a lot to learn there. And then when I moved to Asia, I ended up starting working in a lot of golf. From there, I ended up in India and started working in badminton. That was kind of how I suppose, found my feet in Indian sports. And that was through, some of the most prominent badminton players at the time, around about 2016, 2017. I think, again, that journey working with different athletes, different sports, etc., has really shaped where I am. At the moment. So it's been a really cool journey for me. And as I said, I'm certainly not finished the journey. I'm still carrying on.
I'm sure because for a role like yours, you need experience throughout different sports, expertise, because you're dealing with athletes of different sports, different kinds, different bodies, different types. And specifically at Paris Olympics, you had like a huge contingent. Speaking of Olympics, Shiva, you've been to 6 Olympics. I still can't get over that fact, honestly. I mean, I've been hearing this fact since probably the last 6 years. And I spoke to you maybe 5, 6 years ago, and probably some interview. And that was the first time I got to know about the sport. But I want to understand, because you have been in so many Olympics, so many things have changed for Indian sport, right? From funds, the kind of teams an athlete has. So how did that evolve for you? If you can just break it down for our audience, like from your first Olympics to your 6th Olympics, what all changed? How did it evolve for you?
Yeah. Well, there are many ways. It's a very interesting question because there are many ways you can look at it. First of all, at a global level, sport is in constant change, evolution, and improvement, right? So the entire ecosystem changes. At the same time, in India, this period in which I was an active athlete, I think was the period in which the biggest shift of perception towards sport was taking place in our country. Initial years, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say there was absolutely nothing. There's no kind of support. There was no understanding. There was no will to be part of, an international sports movement. All that changed a lot. Especially I think 2008 was an important year. First individual medal in 2004, probably Olympics. Then 2008 with Abhinav, and this also aligned with the idea of India wanting to come out as a global player. Excuse the pun, but it's not just in sports, but a global player in the world. And so I saw a marked difference in the domestic approach. However, this is not uniform amongst all sports. Some sports, had a different journey, and some sports are still, pretty much in the background. And I think what is needed is to have kind of a unified, consolidated, structured approach that works across sport. Because, by diversifying different types of sports, you're able to reach people. And sports is about people, and sports is about how you grow the youth of the country and how the country develops. And so after such a, transitional kind of period in which I was an athlete, one of my unfulfilled ambitions was to help this realization of the sports dream in India. And so while I was an athlete, I was already thinking of it in those terms, because I knew that some of the things are not going to change while I'm an active athlete. You need somebody to go behind the scenes and build the system. And so that helped me to prepare. So by the time I decided to retire from active sport, there were some things that I could do in India. Initially, it was more of just private initiatives of mine, pro bono, things like that. But in the meantime, you have the industry of sport in India growing. So in the last 10 years, we're seeing so many other institutes, corporates, NGOs, Reliance Foundation, among one of them, that are working in a consolidated way together with the government. So this ecosystem is being created. And then there's a larger picture of bringing in, the premier global sports events such as the Olympics in 2036. So these are all things that kind of inspire athletes then to remain in the system, to help in other ways. And it's good, because normally, I mean, I'm probably an exception, but normally athletes' careers are really, really short. And so how do you make use of all that accumulated experience, exposure, and skill to pass this on to the next generation? So it's a very interesting time in sport in India. There are a lot of changes. We can speak about some of them in the future. And I think one of the, since you referenced the Paris Olympics, one thing that both of us were involved with, and I was very proud of that, is that for the first time ever, the Indian contingent at an Olympic Games actually had a sports science center, actually had doctors, physios, psychologists, people, there to give that kind of support to our athletes, and the athletes deserve that. But it's something that was completely missing in the past. Now, this is just a first step, so there's a long, evolution, and long way to go ahead also, and the learning curve is really steep. But thanks to my experience as an athlete, and now as part of the supporting ecosystem, I'm proud to be play a part still.
We're so glad that the Indian ecosystem and the industry have people like you who think beyond playing the sport, and especially after achieving so much in the sport. So thanks for that on behalf of the ecosystem. Chris, going on to you, I wanted to understand, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are quite curious to know, you have worked in different countries, you've worked with different kind of teams. And we know a lot of our Indian athletes come from rural backgrounds. So it must have been a crazy cultural shift for you. So how did you work your way around that? Because a lot of the athletes don't even know English, right?
Mm.
So how did you work around that?
So I think, again, I would almost kind of reverse the cause-effect relationship there. Like, I would say that the experiences that I've had, having grown up in South Africa, worked with athletes from a rural setting, maybe not necessarily with great English. I speak English as a first language, and I'm not very good at any other languages, unfortunately. And then having moved to China, and I mean, you can't leave your front door in China without speaking Mandarin. That's just a fact. So you have to pick things up, but it's not necessarily about me having upskilled myself. I think it's more about the environment kind of having upskilled me, if that makes sense. So I think through all of the different places I've worked and the people I've worked with and the environments that I've been in, I've kind of, I suppose, developed, I hope, an ability to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more humble, a little bit more open when I'm meeting somebody. So it's not necessarily about me, how do I get the best out of this relationship with this athlete in front of me who can't communicate with me? It's more like, how do I hear the athlete? Does that make sense? Like, how can I kind of make them a little bit better at communicating with me as opposed to me, because I'm never going to be able to, unfortunately, communicate with people from 6 different languages, or people who speak 6 different languages. But I suppose being able to learn from the athletes, being able to learn with colleagues as well. I've worked with colleagues who I don't speak the same language as necessarily very easily. So it's been an interesting journey, and I think it's maybe is one of the things that has allowed me to be as flexible as I have been with locations geographically and different groups that I've worked with, is maybe the previous experiences have informed my next experience. And I've been a lot more open and accepting, understanding the cultures are different, understanding that beliefs are different. The person who walks through the door may well have an ACL injury, and I've seen, I don't know, hundreds of those. But there's a human attached to the ACL. And what's that human story? What's the background? What are all the things that affect them? And so being open to understanding that, okay, well, this is not just an ACL walking through the door, and trying to understand all those extra things. I think that's a really important thing that maybe that's a message for anyone who wants to work in a foreign culture or in a different place. It can be, I suppose, scary. It can be a little bit unsettling to think, God, how am I going to go and work in X, Y, or Z place? But fundamentally, as long as you've got the basics right and you know how to do the job, of course, the biology and that kind of stuff is pretty set, then it's just really about being probably, open-minded, communicating effectively, and again, trying to be maybe a little bit humble and not thinking that you go in as the expert trying to teach everyone things,
Could you pick up any Hindi or Marathi?
Nay. No, not much, I'm afraid. My son speaks better Hindi than I do, and he's 7.
Nice. So your family stays with you in India?
Yeah, so myself and my wife moved over here in 2016, and we've had 2 children since we've been here.
Do you speak Italian?
Yes, I do. I speak a few languages. That's one of the side effects of traveling when you're young to so many countries, spending time. I developed a really keen interest in languages and travel and people, and I speak about 6 languages now. Exactly
Well,
what you were mentioning.
we should switch roles.
Yeah. So, and also it came from the fact that when I was in traveling as part of representing India as part of the Indian team, it's weird to say team because it was just me, so I had to interact with coaches from other countries, sports scientists, other athletes, and so I had to push myself outside my comfort zone, and that helped me to pick up all of that. So not just the language part, but also the technical know-how, seeing what kind of setup the other teams have. Biomechanics was it changed a lot of things for me. The science of sport materials, engineering materials, that was very important in my sport. And then of course the sports science and medicine part, which is the physio, the work that goes in for your conditioning before your actual competitive season. How do you plan out your season? So all these were concepts that I learned by being part of high performance teams of other countries, traveling together with them, international programs. And I was like a sponge. I was just taking everything in because somewhere maybe in my unconscious I knew that I'll need it in the future because we need all these things to be replicated in India.
Any instances for both of you, because you were like the team behind at the Olympics, at the recently concluded Paris Olympics? Any specific instances where you both had to kind of intervene and do something which was helping like the athlete, or which you had needed to do for him or her to perform?
Yeah, well, I can think of quite a few. I think the point is that when you're working in high performance sport at an elite level, um, these are athletes who are already at the top of their game. They've been there, they know their craft, they have a process that they're used to. So you don't need to teach them the ABCs. In fact, you need to respect them because what they know have brought them that far, right? So there's probably a lot to learn, and you have to change your approach accordingly because we are dealing with human beings, right? But definitely, when you see there is a work ethic and a commitment which is part of, since we're talking about Olympics, right? What makes an Olympian, right? The dedication, that perseverance, the culture for excellence, right? And wanting to always better yourself right? So, and you see that in some of our athletes, some of our top athletes in India. I mean, I can take a few names. Neeraj is one that stands out. Definitely during the Olympic experience, it was something that we had discussed. We could see the approach, and that's what differentiates somebody who's at the very top versus the rest, right?
Was there anything he did differently on the field which you could like instantly see and like, that's why he's a gold medalist?
Most of the things he does, to be honest, if you don't mind me jumping in. Basically, it was so funny that so many of us commented on it independently. It wasn't like somebody came up with this idea and everybody agreed. Everybody independently came and said, like, you just watch the way, and again, these things aren't secrets. It's not like, him and his team have this secret magic potion that, it's literally, he just does the basics. He owns his process. He's on time. He's organized. He's meticulous. He's planned. None of these things cost any money. Like it's not like he's privileged to be able to do that. It's a mentality thing. He was, we had a system, maybe a little bit off topic, but we had a system in the recovery space where you book the facilities. And a lot of athletes would come and book, or maybe they wouldn't, and they'd pop their head in and say, hey, is it free? Can I do X, Y, and Z? Or maybe some of their support team, maybe the physio would come down, or the coach would say, oh, so-and-so wants X, Y, and Z at whatever time, cool, whatever. Neeraj, every single day, would come in, he would put his name on the list on his own, he'd walk out, he'd be there 5 minutes before, he'd get ready, he'd do his thing, he was watching his own clock, boom, 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 done, nice and tidy, leaves the room. No fanfare, no, it's just, and I'm not saying that everyone did that, they would be successful. Of course, there's a massive genetic component. There's, I'm not saying he's coached incredibly well, but it was very interesting to see the process of our most successful Olympian, in comparison to, and I'm not saying everyone else was shocking and terrible and, whatever, but the point is, I think the person with the best process is probably our most successful.
And it's not a surprise he won consecutive medals at 2 consecutive games. The other team that did that was the hockey team, and even there, you see that discipline, right? Everybody, you're part of a team, and you stick to the basics, you stick to the process, you respect each other, and this actually helps, especially in a team sport. It helps all the supporting staff, the coach, the equipment, the nutrition, whatever you're doing. It helps that to really, it helps the athletes to get the best advantage from that, and if anything needs to be modified, or if any new tactics need to applied, especially in the case of hockey, when you have a team that has that kind of discipline, that breeds trust, between each other, because you have your teammates back, and vice versa. Same with the coaches. So simple things, everybody was dressed the same. Nobody would be late for anything. Nobody would complain. And there were a lot of complaints in the Paris Olympics, and it's fine. It's part of the experience. There might be some things you like, not like, but how much importance are you going to give that? What is your purpose of being here? So with few athletes, you could see a difference, and the results showed it.
I think support staff from a sports science and medicine point of view, that's exactly what Shiva was talking about with us setting up that recovery and sports science facility. Was we went around the country to everyone and said, right, what do you guys do? What do you currently do? What practices do you currently do? Because it doesn't help us at the 23rd hour to come in and tell everyone, listen, you got to change because, ice baths are the best thing in the world. They've qualified for the Olympics already. So what did you do to get here? We want to try and make sure that when you step into that room in Paris, you can do exactly the same thing. And that's more, it's not super exciting work. It's literally quite boring. It's like you're just trying to make sure the wheels don't come off. Like, is everything in place so that the athlete can perform well? All of the exciting, crazy, stuff is all beforehand. Everybody at the Olympics for the most part is healthy, they're fit, they're in peak condition. You're not changing anything. You're just basically trying to make sure that nothing goes wrong.
We spoke a lot about Paris Olympics. One thing we wanted to get more insights on, because both of you were there. is India House, the first ever NOC hospitality house from India, and a lot of athletes visited. So, how was your experience with India House? Did you get a chance to visit? Would you go there? Like, how was the atmosphere there?
Well, I did get a chance to visit India House, and I would have looked forward to spend more time there because it was really a fun space dedicated to India, to Indians, Indian fans, Indian athletes. It was a celebration of India in Paris, right? So it is a little bit of the larger message of sport beyond the field of play. How do you showcase your country, your culture to the world in a place like Paris? We had concerts, we had Indian crafts, art and crafts, stores. We had sale of Indian jerseys, and of course, it was a place for Indian athletes to come celebrate their victories, be celebrated by the Indian fans. So it was like a little India in Paris. So I think it was extremely popular. There was a lot of good food. There were a lot of those things that athletes, especially after their competitions, they went pretty wild on. And yeah, I think it shows also our eagerness as a country, to tell the world that we are here and this is what we are about, and we are, we're wanting to make friends, and it's great that Reliance Foundation took that initiative, and the whole thing was managed by Reliance Foundation, and I think everybody who took part in it came back very happy from that experience.
He mentioned about food. Are you a big fan of Indian food or?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I try not to touch this stuff because I think you just balloon as soon as you do. But no, I love it. It's really good. Probably part of the reason we were happy to move here is the food, actually, to be honest.
How was India House for you?
Yeah, amazing. Really, really good. Didn't get the chance to go during the Olympics, for obvious reasons. We had crazy long days and obviously we were really busy. But towards the back end, we had a number of events there, celebrating athletes, celebrating the contingent, people who'd won, people who hadn't won, whatever, highs and lows kind of thing. But it was excellent. It was really, really good. I mean, the whole thing was put together brilliantly. It was a cool thing, I think, for the athletes to be able to go and hang out in, a very comfortable space within Paris all together, without too much kind of external distraction. Obviously, there were, local Indian fans and that in the within India House, and everybody, that was festive. That got a little bit crazy, but in a good way, and I think, the company put on an amazing facility for Indian athletes, primarily in my opinion. But I think anyone who went there would have really enjoyed it. It was really good.
There was a queue, miles long queue every day outside, and I was get calls. I get into India House. Sorry,
Yeah, not my department.
not my department, but
I couldn't even get in. I couldn't even get in when I went in. I had to try and sneak through, a couple of back doors and stuff.
What did you
It was
eat?
good. So they had your standards, they had like all the chart stuff, the vada pav, all the kind of things that I try and stay away from were top, top of the menu. But the one day with all the athletes, actually had an amazing feast with, all of your butter chickens and biryanis and everything at the back, which is phenomenal. Really, really good.
There's one more thing that has been bothering a lot of athletes, and I'm sure you work with a lot of athletes, that is funding. And the kind of experience you have, like back then, things were very different. We didn't have corporate supporting, we didn't have a lot of uh, private companies, public companies that were trying to build the ecosystem. Things have changed from then. At Reliance Foundation, we have a lot of athletes we're supporting. So, how have you perceived that, and what is your process of kind of scouting athletes, getting them that required fund?
well, it is a huge change in athlete support system in recent years to have so many organizations, including Reliance Foundation, that is setting up this really professional, science-based, support system for athletes. And for the few athletes who are good enough to qualify for such a program, such as the Reliance Foundation Scholarship Program, all of a sudden you find that you have a elite team of support staff and entourage, placed at your disposal, where you have your physiotherapy, you have your strength and conditioning, you have your sports psychology, all aspects of sports medicine as well. You have data analysis. You have managers that are helping you make your bookings, plan your schedules, talk to you to have your annual training and competition calendar. So it's something that during my days as an athlete was unheard of, and I never even imagined that a few years down the line all this would come to pass. Plus, there's of course funding for the athlete, training, exposure, equipment, and even stipends. To because to take care of your personal needs. So it's a huge support system. Obviously, you do need to qualify for it, so you do need to be at a high level. There are a lot of initiatives also being provided at a development level, which Reliance Foundation does. And so the ecosystem still needs to develop a lot more, I think. I mean, we're doing a lot of good stuff, but the number of people we're able to reach and the levels of the pyramid, let's say the sport development pyramid that we're able to reach, is limited. And it's important to see how the various organizations working for sport in India can actually come together and collaborate. You have a lot of private um, organizations, foundations that I think can do a lot better if these efforts are aligned. You have some really good government initiatives, whether it's TOPS, whether it is this new TAG program, whether you have NSDF or ACTC. All these things need to be looked at holistically so that everybody can figure out what part they need to play. But if you're an elite athlete today, if you're at an Asian Games level, if you're an Olympic Games level, or even if you're a national champion, it's so easy now to be noticed by companies and foundations such as Reliance Foundation. We have scouts that are on the field, going for all the junior competitions, going for the senior competitions, going for the Khelo Indias, preparing reports. So an athlete doesn't even need to do anything. When I was an athlete, I would write to hundreds and hundreds of companies, and 1% would not even. I mean, only 1% would answer, and 1% of those would maybe give a time for a meeting. Now scouts are coming on the field and they're giving you a contract then and there. So there are a lot of opportunities, and it's bound to increase. And one of the things I think I'm most happy about is that when we're trying to create a system that is replicable, okay, that is a scientific system. Coaching, if in the past, you always had these genius coaches, that can pull a rabbit out of a hat, that can make you into the perfect athlete, but nobody knows how. It was considered the coach's magic, right? But from a scientific approach, you can monitor, you can get the data, you can evaluate, so that what's working on this person can work on the next person also, of course, with the personalizations and everything. But it's a replicable system, and that's what we need in this country if we have to, make rapid progress.
Shiva mentioned about stuff like physio, psychology. What makes sports special is a lot of comeback stories. And I'm sure in the field you are, there must have been so many athletes that you would have treated on that would have gone from a massive, scary injury to winning medals for the country. Any instances while your work with the Reliance Foundation with any of the athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, we've been very fortunate through the processes that Shiva's described to work with some of the best athletes in the country. Olympic medal winners, Asian medal winners. Lovelina is an easy one to mention. She's had phenomenal success. Obviously won't delve into specifics about any injuries or anything, but she's been up and down with injuries. And again, going back to the level of professionalism from an athlete, she's phenomenal. She's an amazing athlete. So for her to have come back and was quite frankly, very unlucky in Paris. You know, among a number of athletes actually in Paris who were quite unlucky, I think. You know, the standard story is that we underperformed in Paris, but I think if you look at the amounts of people who missed out on a medal or a significant, you know, performance by 1 spot or 2 spots, it's probably actually a very good picture. But no, look, we're very good. I think one of the things we do very well in what we do, and maybe we're very spoilt, and actually we are. I know we're very spoilt in all of the facilities and opportunities that we have as a business, as an organization. We have the hospital, we have the Rise Sports side, the Reliance Foundation gets, you know, a lot of the Reliance Foundation Youth Sport, the Olympic stuff that Shiva heads up, the scholarship program gets a lot of support from all of these different verticals. And what we do at the hospital really, really well is kind of we're available to take in any of these athletes. They can come and do residential kind of sessions with us. Wherever they are in India, they come and move to Mumbai, and we look after them for however long it takes, you know, 6 weeks, 3 months, whatever. Riddhi is an archer. Again, I won't go into the specifics of the injury, but she's on her way back now. So that's a really exciting story because she's had, you know, a really up and down path, unfortunately. We've got a young badminton player now who's just recently undergone a surgical procedure in his knee. And he's doing phenomenally well. So he's another bright one to look out for in the future. We've recently had Divyam, who is another one of our young badminton players, say graduate out of the program, really. Like, he spent a long time with us and he's gone back and he's playing incredibly well. So there are loads of these stories, and it's a really cool thing to be a part of. You know, if you look at the process from what Shiva's describing, from finding the talent, screening the talent, providing them with this bespoke care all the way through their journey, to witnessing the success, like, it's a cool thing to be a part of, you know, and I think it's something that both of us are probably quite proud to be a part of.
We're lucky to have individuals like you who have been constantly working around these things, because like Shiva said, this was unheard of like maybe 10 years back also. So things have really changed in the last 10-15 years, and we have people who have had different experiences specifically for you, like from an athlete to actually I've heard so many athletes who get saturated and after their career is over, they're like, we'll probably just chill, or we'll probably do something very different from sport. So it's quite commendable on what both of you have done and contributed in individual capacities. So
it's really exciting times to be part of sport in India, and for people who are currently involved, I think it's the time to look at it from a longer term perspective. You know, to be involved with sports for a longer term. How can you contribute to this system, and how can you grow your personal and professional, you know, career in what makes you happy? So Reliance Foundation gives that kind of opportunities to people, as do other organizations now coming up in this. So I'm looking forward to this evolution in the coming years.
all of us are looking forward. I'm sure our viewers, probably in the next 5 years, when we go back and listen to this episode, they'll be like, oh, this was spoken 5 years back, and
Hope
now
so.
we have progress from there as well.
Yeah.
So, Chris, Shiva, you were there at Paris Olympics. We spoke a lot about Paris Olympics. Any like standout memory from the Olympics? Any international athlete? Anything that happened that you want to speak about?
Yeah, so I'll go first. I think probably as a standout experience, and not necessarily positive or negative, but I would say the day that the hockey guys won bronze and Neeraj won silver, I'll probably remember that day for, I think, as long as I can remember anything. And purely, besides the fact that it was an amazing performance and an amazing outcome, everyone was excited. You know, the guys came back to the village and we were all partying. It was good fun. But the context within which it happened, the day before, was when we had an athlete disqualified for the wrestling. It was just horrific for our contingent. Honestly, the place was like a morgue. It was just a terrible, terrible day. The 7th of August, I think. And then the guys won their medals on the 8th. So that 24 hours to 36 hour period was just horrible for everyone. You know, there was nothing else happening. Basically, all the air had been sucked out of the room for everyone. It was terrible. And then for them to go and, like, you know, win and bring positivity back into the camp. Because remember, the Olympics is carrying on around this. You know, other athletes are still going to their events and stuff. So it was just amazing. And it was just an incredible window into the highs and lows of professional sports. You know, just how unbelievably good it can be, but also how immensely heartbreaking and low it can be. And I think it was an amazing experience for anyone who was there to kind of, you know, I'm sure for the athletes involved, they had very, you know, different experiences of it. But for anyone else witnessing it, it was just a crazy experience, really. So that's definitely the moments of Paris for me, neither positive nor negative, just a really good window into professional sports, I think.
I think that's what makes them an Olympian, right? Champion mentality. And that's why they're there. So shifting from having something like that happening to their own team to getting over it and winning a medal for the country, I think that's what
Yeah.
probably makes them different from anyone else.
For sure.
Well, yes, I mean, I agree that athletes, you know, they're capable to, you know, put up with a lot more than what you know, you'd normally expect of somebody. But they're still human beings, right? They still have the same emotions. They still have the same insecurities. And so I think, you know, latching on to what Chris just said, the environment that was created in the Indian team, thanks to the Sports Science Center, and it was not just sports science, there was the office, there was a little bit of a recreation center over there. It became a point of gathering where people would come together and watch the matches together sometimes. And just generally after that, it would become a conversation. And you had some of the senior athletes, you had, you know, Srijesh, you had Rohan, you had, you know, these athletes talking to some of the younger lot. You know, you had Dinidi, who was a 16-year-old athlete. You know, you had some of the wrestlers who, you know, come from completely different socio-economic background than others. So it created basically a support system of athletes, you know, of people from who shared those experiences, that understood when there was success or when there was failure for their team members, how to support that, right? And that support system became very important for our athletes, because when you're coming back completely dejected from, you know, a loss, all kinds of thoughts going into your head, you know, other athletes who've been through that coming and telling you it's okay, you know, or to be able to celebrate together with, you know, these people. And I think that was extremely important, and that is something that, you know, I can't stress it enough. You keep seeing such things at the Olympic Village. I used to wake up in the morning to this hymns.
Yeah, the South
the-
Sea Island
yeah, it
guys,
was
or
the
South
Enoch,
Pacific guys.
the South Pacific Islanders. You know, there was a rugby team. I thought it's a choir singing. I opened the window and there's a rugby team singing.
That'd be
Every
amazing,
morning they
actually,
would
every
do that.
morning, yeah.
And then you had the New Zealanders doing the haka. You had, you know, each country had something, activities that they were doing that binds them together as a group. So you take pride in your culture, but also you support each other. And I think that was, even for me, I think this camaraderie between our team, that was one of the defining
It was really
moments.
special. Yeah, it was good.
There's one segment that we do with all of our guests, and since you spoke about athletes and kind of uh, other interests that they might have, any book recommendations that you might have for athletes, for our viewers? It could be sport, non-sport. We will start with you, Wiz.
I would say 2 books. Sorry, I'm going to cheat, but same author, Sports Gene and Range, David Epstein. And I'm sure a lot of people would have read those, certainly in the areas that we work in. But both of those books, I would say, are excellent.
Shiva?
Maybe to add to Chris's recommendation, there's a book I recently read called, it was very, very interesting, is called House of Foxes, which is not on the performance side, but about the sports administration part. It's a little bit, you know, about the international boxing, politics, and, you know,
Okay. Plenty of that, I'm
power
sure.
games, for, you know, how people are, you know, getting involved in federations, international diplomacy, spying, and
Yes,
all
no
this kind
doubt.
of thing. So all this is also part
The
of
spy
comparative
novels.
sports. So it's very interesting to see, you know, how kind of this kind of governance works behind the curtain. So that was an interesting read for me.
Thank you for sharing a lot of instances from your experiences as an athlete, as somebody who works closely with athletes, behind the sports, behind the team, everything that has happened at Paris Olympics. Thank you so much. I really hope we meet again in the next 5 years, 10 years, and we speak about this again and see what has progressed over the last 5 years, because I'm sure things will just keep growing from here for Indian sport. So thank you guys for coming in and taking all the time.
Thank you very much. Me too. I look forward to the follow-up.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, this is Shiva Keshavan. Glad to be here on the Reliance Foundation podcast, Beyond the Podium. Very great time.
Absolutely. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to follow Reliance Foundation Youth Sports
On YouTube.